Hey guys, welcome to the Scholar Online YouTube channel, the channel that is all about learning, okay? So before we get started with this week's tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate what exactly we're going to be building here by the end of the tutorial. But before I get started, just remember to like this video that you're watching and leave us a comment below because it really helps our chances and with the algorithm and all of that so that more people can view the videos that we're creating, all right? And of course, if you open up the description of the video below, you will see when I say I'm going to link useful links in there. You will find it in there, and also video timestamps to be able to navigate to different parts of the video. It will all be in the description of the video below. So today we are going to pick up where we left off last week, and we were talking about all the changes of that were brought on OpenAI Dev Day, all right? And we discussed how to update your model last week, and today we're going to try and work on the multimodal part of our application, but not full multimodal. We are going to build an application that uses function calling, that uses DALLE-3 to operate. So in this a chatbot, we're going to use Streamlit to create a chatbot where you can type a message and say, tell me a bedtime story, and the chatbot will go and it will respond, and it will tell you a bedtime story. Once upon a time in a land far, far away, there was all that. And now the exact same chatbot, we could ask for an image. We could ask for it to generate an image, and there I've typed in an image. Please generate me a landscape image of a billboard of a company called Modal GPT. A landscape image of a billboard design, all right? Of a billboard design for a company called this and that. And then I'm going to ask for an image generation, and you'll see the prompt changes there that I've asked for an image, and we've built the chatbot to be intuitive enough to be able to tell the difference of whether you are asking for an image or you're just having a normal conversation. So if you're asking for an image, it returns you an image. But if you're asking just a general question, as you saw, we were asking for a bedtime story before, it returns a bedtime story. So there's the image. We asked for it to generate an image of this, and there's our billboard design on the street. And it's so intuitive that you could even ask for a square image, all right? So imagine I didn't want a landscape image and I wanted a square image instead. We've built it in that it's able to actually pick from the prompt whether or not it should be sending you a landscape, a square, a portrait. You don't have to even specify. It will even intuitively just decide on its own whether it should be landscape or portrait. But here I see it sent the exact same image. Oh no, this is a different one. All right, so this is actually a square image. You don't see it, the billboard, it is landscape. But if you look at the image that was returned, is actually square. You see at the bottom over there, it's a square image that it gets returned. But of course, I love this image. I'm going to save this image and use it in my design. All right, this is a billboard. Billboard 2. So what we're going to build in this application is exactly that. So we're trying to actually build more intelligent applications, so you don't have to go through menus anymore to say whether I want image generation or chat generation. The application itself knows what you want. What is a Bitcoin? All right, if you ask it what is a Bitcoin, the application should intuitively know that you're not asking for an image, and then it should respond with text and send you what is Bitcoin. And this is all built in one Streamlit app that decides what you. So if you want to know how to build this, stay tuned until the end, because we're going to go through a very detailed process of showing you exactly how to build this application for yourself in this video. Last week, I showed you how to simply update your current OpenAI. If you have a function and you want to update to the new one, I showed you with this function over here how to do it. So this is a function that we wrote last week, and we're able to update the original, chat completion model using the new OpenAI client object. And I showed you exactly how to do that. So Obviously, this was also new to me, and I've also been playing around with this, and I'd love to share with you on the channel everything that I find out, so that you guys stay informed and you know that this is a channel to sort of subscribe to stay informed as far as OpenAI coding with Python is concerned. So there's a couple of things that I figured out that I came up with this week, and I thought this is just interesting to share with you, specifically if you're new to the API. If you are watching this video and you haven't updated your code, probably start here first, because there's a couple of things you might want to know with regards to the code. So if you look at the pricing guide, and I think I touched a little bit on this last week, but I think it sort of dawned on me how huge this thing is, and people might not figure it out if I don't make it absolutely explicit, right? There's a lot of talk, and I even talked about it last week, that GPT-4 Turbo is way cheaper than the old GPT. Okay, that's undisputed. That's one of the things that Sal Altman led with in his talk, and that is completely true. In fact, it's 30% cheaper than the old GPT-4, right? It's way cheaper. However, what you need to keep in mind is that GPT-4 Turbo is still 10 times more expensive than GPT-3 Turbo. So I learned that the hard way, because I've got a function and an application that uses, GPT-3 and GPT-4, and I thought, let me just upgrade it because it works much better. And I'm telling you, within 2 days, I was owing OpenAI $200, right? So from $20 to $200, that's a lot. And the improvement is there, but I don't think it's worth 10 times the price. So I quickly went back to 3.5 Turbo. So if you haven't updated your code, just keep in mind that 4 Turbo is 10 times the price of 3.5 Turbo, right? 4 Turbo works a little bit better. It gives better output. I've tested them both. So if you ask the same question, you get better depth, you get more. It's more intelligent. It's definitely more advanced. But if you're building an app that's got thousands of users, perhaps you don't need to be that advanced. It depends on what your use case is, right? The second thing is 3.5 Turbo is still way faster than 4 Turbo. One of the challenges with GPT-4, the old GPT-4, was how slow it was with the developers. I know with our developer forums, we used to discuss, I know they improved it over time, but it was still considerably slower than 3.5 Turbo. And that is still the case with 4 Turbo. It is slower. A user might not feel it, but as a developer, you feel it immediately. 3.5 Turbo, you put a request and the answer is immediate, right? And 4 Turbo takes a few seconds. But now this is the biggest problem, and this has been an issue with the developer forum for quite some time, and there's a topic I've been following up, and perhaps I'll share the link with you in the description if I don't forget. 3.5 Turbo has got server issues with respect to sort of hanging, right? You could send a request to it and then you get a response in a second, 2 seconds. Maybe 60% of the time, right? And the 40% of the time you could send a request and get absolutely nothing. It just hangs. It's a problem if you're building an application that is used by people and if you need quick responses, because it can hang for a minute. I've tested it. It can hang for 2 minutes. Sometimes it can hang indefinitely, right? So this was actually the reason why I moved from 3.5 Turbo to 4, because I said this hanging is completely unacceptable, right? But I eventually went back because it, there's a user who commented on the thread, which I will share with you, that said, there's specific time periods, which I've also noticed, but depending on my time zone and his time zone, I don't know what that time period is in my time zone. I'm going to try and narrow it down, right? There are specific time periods in the day, and I'm assuming that's when the server gets the most requests, right? There's a specific time period of a few hours where the hanging is much, much worse. And he said within that time period, he uses GPT-4 because this doesn't have that hanging problem. And then outside of that period, he goes back to 3.5 because of the price. So just keep that in mind. I know I showed you how to update this to 3.5 Turbo, and just keep in mind the price differences and the hanging problem if you're building. So in my mind, 3.5 Turbo is not production ready, right? But what else are you going to do? 4 Turbo is production ready, but it is extremely expensive. It depends on what your application is. For people like us who are building chatbots, where we are getting 1,000, 2,000 requests per day from users on the chatbot, right? Using 4 Turbo is extremely expensive. And some of the users don't want to pay for our chatbots. You know, they sort of expect it to be free. And I don't know where that sort of thinking comes from, but that's just how it is, right? So price, and the hanging issue is a real problem. In my mind, I think it's going to be resolved over time, because I remember when ChatGPT 4 came out the first time, and around March this year, when you know, there was the improvement, there was also this issue of hanging with the model, where, you know, people on our application, you know, were struggling. And it happens even with the ChatGPT online, where it goes down for a while. You know, they're having issues with the US attacks and all of that. So in my mind, I think users of ChatGPT are already sort of used to the sort of, you know, like, people don't penalize your app so much because of the occasional hanging. I've seen people have been more understanding, because they know that when the hanging happens, even when they go online to ChatGPT, they're sort of like, you know, it actually just kicks them out. And sometimes our application is actually up when you can't even log into the normal ChatGPT, even for a Plus user. So I think there's like benefits, or, you know, just think about it. And, you know, I think my users sort of, you know, give me credit, and they don't penalize me so much for the hanging. So I've gone back to 3 Turbo, and I'm just going to deal with those hangings when they happen. Okay, now today's video, I want to actually expand on what we did last week, because obviously just being able to call a function inside of a file called GPT.py is not always sufficient, because you actually want to build an application. So I'm going to show you how to actually build this into an application that you can actually use, right? And I'm going to use Streamlit, because it's the easiest way to do it. And if you figured out how to do it with Streamlit, and perhaps you want to use it inside of Django, or you know, or any other web platform in Python, whether it's Flask, you know, it's the same principle. So I think if you can figure it out in Streamlit, you can figure it out in any other application platform. So I'm going to show you some sort of, you know, tools. We're going to go through some of these lists over here. We'll see what we can sort of like scratch out of this list, where I can show you. In fact, today I'm going to show you how to do the image generation, and how to actually build a multifunctional chatbot, because nowadays people expect that. Ever since ChatGPT introduced the ability to ask a question or ask for an image from the same place, people expect that out of your own application. So I'm going to show you how to actually do that, where you have a chatbot that you're normally conversing with, but at the same time you can also ask for an image, and it will intuitively know that this time it must either give you a response or it must give you an image, right? So we're going to do that today, and stay tuned. This is a very important skill, especially for a developer, because it's expected nowadays. You won't be able to switch menu items anymore. People will not tolerate that in your application. So what we're going to do today is we're going to build a Streamlit app, right, based on this function which we wrote last week. Okay, so let's run this in Python. Let me see what I have over here. I think I only have the config and the GPT.py. Okay, so let me open this GPT.py. And okay, so this function that I had last week is also copied in there, so I don't have to recopy it again. It's just basically a function that makes an API call with a prompt. Okay, and the system instruction is built in here. What you can do, and what I generally do for the system instruction, is I don't like to build it into the application. If you go into production, it's probably not a good idea. What I like to do is to put it inside of my settings, right? So you could have, if you're working with Django, you have a settings file. If it's Flask or anything else, you might have a config file, and in there I would put the system instruction. so that I know one place to go to update my system instruction, right? So that I don't have it in the code. But for learning purposes, we'll leave it in here. This just sort of, informs the GPT, the chatbot you will have based on WhatsApp, include relevant emojis in your response, okay? And then the system instruction gets added into the messages list, and then you sort of create your prompt, and then you initiate the client, and then we're using 3.5 Turbo 1106. This is the model this one over here. Okay, so this is 1106. It's the one that is 10 times cheaper than GPT-4, and we can even try them both, and you can see the response or you can do it at home. Okay, if you have access to GPT-4 Turbo in your API, just try them both with the same question and see sort of the differences in the response. You'll see that there is a difference. And if you were building something a bit more advanced where you needed more input, for example, a blog, right, or something like that, people are paying enough money for it, then I would go for 4 Turbo. But for a chatbot, all right, which is what we're building, for a chatbot functionality, actually, I would just stick with 3.5 Turbo, right? And then after that, unless if they do something about the price. And I know they've tried. I've heard some admins saying they've tried to do something about the price of 4 Turbo. And I believe them, because of the 128K context, obviously, it's using a lot of resources. I totally get that. Hence, I'm saying it depends on the use case. If you're trying to get it to write a longer context, like a blog or an article, maybe you want to use 4 because it'll have more memory in terms of writing a more structured output. But if you're just having a chat conversation, hey, what's the price of Bitcoin and things like that, I would, it depends on what the use case is. Cool. So let's test everything is still working fine. All right. So I'm going to close this, right? If you are new and you're watching this video for the first time and you didn't watch last week's video, I would highly recommend you go watch last week's video so that you can understand how we got here. And because last week's video, we also focused on updating your code, because the old API was completely different from the new API. So the library and how everything gets initiated is completely different. So watch last week's video to get a better understanding of how we actually got to this function. Otherwise, if you are good with it and maybe you are just starting this out for the first time and you're not concerned about how the old code used to look like, then you can just sort of like freeze or pause this video here. You can just copy and paste this code right here while I'm talking, and then you can have it for yourself. Okay, I'm not going to put this in GitHub or anything like that, guys. So this is very simple. It's like a 5-line code. Just see what's there and just rewrite it in your own computer. Once you've done that, we're going to run a Python script. And remember, of course, by now you have run this command, pip install, right, openai. Right, by now you've run this command, because if you were watching last week's video, it's the first thing you would have done. And if you had openai already installed, you would run the command pip install upgrade. I think it's -- upgrade openai. All right, I can also run this anyway. It's never any harm to run that, because perhaps there was a new version that it will upgrade it to. So you see, it's already gone to 1. Yeah, so okay, in my case, I'm good to go. But you can also run this if you had an older version of OpenAI. So because the library has changed, you can't just run this from your old installation. You must upgrade it to the new one so that it picks up the new changes to the library. So once you've done that, then you can run a Python shell. And then in this case, I'm going to pick a prompt. And then I'm prompt. All right. I'm going to pick a prompt. I'm going to say, I don't know, what do you want to ask OpenAI? What does a theory of evolution say? And needless to say, at this point, you need to have your API key. This is basic stuff, hence watch last week's video. You need an API key. You need to define your API key over here. I've just said config.api key because I've saved it inside of the config file. I don't want to display it anymore because I have to keep deleting my API key after every course. And this week I had to supply my phone number for a new API key. So from now on, I'm just not going to display the API key, but just know it's there. I've saved it in a file called config.py, and in that file, I just said API key is equals to, and I put it in there, and then now I can import it from here by saying API keys equals to config dot. Otherwise, if you're just coding this for yourself, you would just say API keys equals to and type whatever it is here, just for testing purposes. This is testing. We're building a Streamlit app. For production purposes, you might want to save it inside of your environment or somewhere where it's not going to be inside of the files at all, so actually that's the best practice with Python, is to just save it inside of your environment. But because I'm like typing on my computer and then I'm running this in another virtual server, I could still do that, but I'm just going to like make it simple for you so you can see exactly how the API key comes into the function, because you need to initiate the API object with the API key by saying API keys equals to, you can just type it in here as a string, whatever it is that you got from OpenAI. Otherwise, if you've saved it in your environment, there's a certain way you need to name it. And if you've named it accordingly, you can just leave this blank. You could just like leave it like that, and it will find it in the environment and edit automatically. So this depends on how well you are, how good you are with, understanding how Python and environments work. Otherwise, I'm just gonna physically show you how to actually put it inside of the object so that you don't get confused as to why your code is not working if you didn't save it already in the environment. Because in the documentation, they do talk about it, they say it, but if you're not a Python buffing and you sort of like didn't pick up that the key is in the environment, you could get lost and like not understand why your code is not running, because it's not, because you also have to name it a certain way. There's a way you have to call it, to name it inside of the environment so that it finds it, because it looks for that variable. You understand? So that's a bit complex. If you don't know how to do that, just have it like that. Okay. Now I've talked quite a bit. I'm going to ask the question, make the function call, and then I'm going to say the response is equals to, okay, before I do that, I need to actually import this. So I'm going to say from GPT, import everything from GPT, so that it imports both the functions that I've got in there, because I've got the image function as well. We'll get to that later. And then I'm just going to say MSG is equals to make the function call, and you see it takes a while. So generally this thing takes a few seconds and you should have a response. You see, I think if I see 10 seconds going past already, it's already sort of hanging, right? It either responds very, very quickly or it's going to be hanging. So we are in that hanging mode now, because it shouldn't take this long to give a response. So this is the problem I was telling you about when I was saying that it just has a tendency to hang. And this is a problem for if you're generating this inside of an application that users are using on a regular basis. Just imagine how long I've been talking for and we still haven't received a response from the AI. So this is a problem. This is actually a major problem, and I will pause this here because I don't want to wait forever. And if this doesn't give me a response, and then we'll come back later, and then I think I'll share with you that thread that talks about this hanging problem. Okay, so what eventually happened was I just stopped it. I sort of like I keyboard interrupted the function, and I stopped the run, and then I ran it again, and then it came back immediately, like 2 seconds, right? And this is the answer it gave me. Theory of evolution explains how species change over time through process of natural selection. And so this hanging is like random. Sometimes it hangs, sometimes it doesn't hang. So here's a thread. I found it while I was waiting, and I waited like a good minute before. So this thing can hang for like 2 minutes or whatever. So it's a real problem. So there it is. This is a thread on the community OpenAI where I actually am the one who brought this up on November 13th, right? Because yeah, it was a problem in my app, really. So a lot of people have responded to this thread. And there was a question here around, there was a suggestion around the retries, which apparently helps. I tried implementing this retry thing, but I think it's a dangerous way of doing it, because I tried implementing it and I actually canceled it. You'll see here's my response. I removed it. The problem with the retry solution is that it actually like cuts the function at the end of the, it waits for like 60 seconds and then retries the API call. But the thing is, the original API call is actually still running. If you actually waited, I've tested this. If you just waited and did nothing, even if it took 5 minutes, it actually eventually returns a response. I've tested this. It can return it even in like 5 minutes time, right? So eventually the response will come. So you have to, but you can't wait 5 minutes. So what I suggest is, and I'm still gonna figure out how to code this in, is to just cut the call instead of retrying it, because if you retry it, the original call is still there. So you might get charged double or 3 times per, for because the response will still come back eventually. So I think this is not a good solution. However, I did mark it as correct at the time because I thought I'm going to try this, and it's only after I tried it that I realized it's not a good solution. I thought there was a way to specify the timeout behavior in the thing. I couldn't find it. If you find it, let me know. But eventually what worked for me, and what, the other guy also responded saying that you can change between the models, because when you have that timeout problem, and you go and you switch to the different model, this model doesn't have that timeout problem. The only problem with this model is that it's extremely expensive, and it's also a preview model, but I think this is worse. However, you can switch models, but right now you can see this was not this was not around a specific time. Like, I made the call, this took 2 minutes, and then I immediately stopped it. I canceled the call and I made it again, and it came back same time. So it wasn't about this happening in a time zone. So you have that scenario where you could make 2 calls and they go without an issue, and then the third one hangs, and then the fourth one goes without an issue. So maybe when you get the hanging one, just have a timeout on the function without a retry, right? So maybe you could do this with a timeout without doing a retry. Just time it out and kill the process, and then call it again. Because often if you do that, the second time actually it comes through. And if it hangs, kill it and try it again. Sometimes it can happen 3 times, but if you then retry it, if you killed it more than twice, I would just send an error message to the client and say, please just give it a minute and come back. So there's ways around this, but the GPT-4 solution that I tried, I'm not going back there again, just due to the price. So I'll link this for you if you want to read more of it. But you can see exactly what I was talking about. It hangs 50% of the time. So now we've tested that function. Now we want to run this function inside of a Streamlit application, because that's the next step. So instead of a Streamlit application, we're going to build a Streamlit application, and we're going to run the API calling the Streamlit application, and then we're going to build like our own chatbot. This is the fastest way to build a chatbot, by the way, is using Streamlit. So I've already written the code here to save you time. If you don't understand this code, I've got a full video on how to create a Streamlit application in my channel. I think it's like 3, 4, 5 videos before this one, but I'll go through it very, very quickly just to help you understand how the code works. So Streamlit is a Python library used a lot by data scientists to quickly create a web front end to sort of interact with your application, right? The way I see it, in my opinion, Streamlit is not a web a web framework like Python Django or something like that, right? However, it is very, very useful for building it very, very quickly without having to understand HTML views, URLs, and all of those things. Very, very quickly being able to build a web interface to your application. So I use it a lot for testing. And then once I've got my web interface tested via Streamlit, then I can go and build a proper web application via Django. You understand? Because obviously authentication and all of those things, I'm not sure how easy they are to do on Streamlit. And Streamlit is just like a very, very simplified, and it also limited with respect to, sort of like components. So, but it's very good for very, very quickly building an interface to your model. So for example, this is our model over here. We just want to build an interface that then gets the prompt from the user and then sends back the response in a chat interface. You understand? So you can do that very, very quickly. 2 lines of code, 3 lines of code in Streamlit. So this is how we did it. First of all, you need to install Streamlit, right? So let's do this pip install, all right, which I've already done, right? So if you haven't, Just run this code, and then that's it. Then you've installed you've installed Streamlit. After you've done it, in this specific case, I don't think we need openai in here, because we only need Streamlit, and then we only need config for the we don't need config either, because we don't need the API key. We only need GPT. GPT is this file over there where you have this function. We just need to import it in here so that we can call those functions, right? And then you can just define the title of the website by saying st. So you import st at the top, and then you say st.title, and you can put whatever title you want. This will define right at the top of the website. It will put the title that you define, and you can use emojis. You can be as creative as you like. So this is as simple as it is to put in an H1 header on an HTML, right? And then you could have like maybe a description of your page, something that helps the user understand what this is about. So I'm just going to say, my name is Karabo, your personal AI chatbot. Right, I am here to assist. You can write anything you want. This will just be added to your thing. And then over here, we obviously have the messages in session state. This, I don't want to confuse you with this, so I'm going to remove it. So this whole session state messages, yeah, let's get rid of it. This is the code we used the last time, because we were trying to get the application to remember the previous conversation. But it's not important, because this is just for demonstration purposes. In a real application, you'd actually want to save that in a database for specific users, because you would have different users on your app. You wouldn't save it in one variable. Then after that, you have st.chat messages, users, right prompt. So here what you do is that you can see there's a chat input, right? So this chat input object is actually especially build Streamlit, what do they call it, component, which actually creates a chatbot that looks like the OpenAI chatbot or any other chatbot which has the input at the bottom and stuff like that. So you create it, and then if somebody sends a prompt to it, then this function runs. Okay, so if somebody sends a prompt and there's a prompt and a prompt exists, what it will do is that it will print the prompt. So st chat message, this chat message goes with the chat input, and there's a user and assistant, right? So the user, you write the prompt, which means it will just print out to on the front end that this is what you've typed. It just sort of feedbacks the message you've typed, and then after that it gets a response from the function call, which is the function call we just did over here, right? So it says GPT go get a response, and then it prints back the response from the thing, and it shows that, and then it's that simple, right? So I can actually just remove all of these I can remove all of these sort of like the narrative. If you copy this code, you can pause this video right here and go and copy this code, and then try and rewrite those narration prompts that I just deleted, right? To help you understand what is the code doing, because I always tell my students, it's very, very important to understand what the code is doing. Code is logic. And as much as you're welcome to copy my code and use it, you need to understand what it's doing. This is why I don't like to share my code on GitHub. And I get that question all the time. I only do it actually if you've bought a course on my website. Other than that, I don't like to share it, because I want you to watch what I'm doing and do what I'm doing as I'm doing it, but also understand exactly what I'm doing, because that's how you learn, right? What is this line doing? And what is that line doing? And what is that line doing? Streamlit application with 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of code, and we're gonna have our chatbot ready to go. All right, so what am I gonna do here? I'm gonna create this. I'm going to say nano. Let me see, let me listen here and see, there's nothing called app.py. So I'm going to call it nano app.py, right? It's the easiest way to do that. And then I'm going to just copy all of this in here, and I'm going to paste it in there, right? And then we are good to go, right? So then we need to run it, and it's very simple how to run a Streamlit app. You just say Streamlit run app app.py. Simple, similar to Flask Run and all of those other things that we normally work with. And then you tell it which file to run. So which means you could have multiple files that you could run them on. So let's see. So let's run app.py, and then it's nice, and it gives you a nice URL. It finds the IP of the machine, and then you can like just sort of like run it in there, and then you've got your Streamlit application. There you go. So this Scholar Online chatbot, this is what we wrote over there, right? And then my name is Karabo, your personal AI chatbot. I'm here to assist. This is, you know, the text that we wrote in there. It just picked it and it knew that's what it must do, and it put in there. And if you wanted to write more things to, you know, you could put that in there. And then obviously you built a chat input. This is that chat input over there, all right? And you know, it's like a text input, but it's chat, you know, chat based. So you could ask the same question, you know, what did we ask before? What is help you understand the theory of evolution. All right, we're gonna type that in there, and it should go. And you see how quick it is. When there's no hanging, it literally responds in 2 seconds or a second. It's extremely fast. That is how I know if I don't get a response in 15 seconds, it is already hanging. And 50 seconds is a long time. So if you're gonna do that timeout function, maybe work with 15-20 seconds. If I don't get a response, kill the function and rerun it, right? The theory of evolution is a scientific concept that explains how species change over time through the process of natural selection. It was proposed, and I'm doing this with you know, GPT, you know, what did I put in here? I'm doing this with like GPT3.5 Turbo. Hence I'm saying GPT3.5 1106 is quite sufficient for what you need. It's more than sufficient. I wouldn't even, I mean, I can give you GPT-4 and you can check that out, or you can do it in your own time, right? It's quite sufficient. So now we've got our chatbot that's working, right? What would be nice is if this conversation continued, right? But I know that actually if I typed something else, it would, you know, start from scratch, because it doesn't have memory, it doesn't remember. But that's okay, we can build that in later. Maybe if we can do this an entire tutorial series. What I want to do now is something else. I want to be able to generate an image, right? So we want an image generation, right? And let's create a new file in here, and we're gonna call it img.py, right? And inside this new file, we're going to pretty much do what was in here. We're gonna copy almost everything that's in here, except where's img.py? I've got a lot of files here. I don't know. I'm gonna copy everything that's in here, but instead we're going to use this image generation, DALLE-3, for generating images. So the documentation is over here. All right. This is the image generation API. It works using DALLE-3. You can actually use DALLE-2 here as well by specifying the model. So over here, when you specify, you could specify DALLE-2 or you could specify DALLE-3. It's up to you. But obviously, we want DALLE-3. That's why we're here. Then the usage, what's really nice and what I really love about this, which wasn't there before, right? This is amazing, is the image quality. So you can specify HD image quality, which means it will generate final lines. It will create images that are photorealistic, right? And you could also specify the size, you know, and this is like 1024. This is like, you know, decent. Like if you were looking for before with DALLE-2 and all the other image generation, we used to almost generate images for fun, but I couldn't see how I could generate an image that I would actually use like on my website or in my social media or in my presentations, because I generally find in my line of work, I need to generate image. I need to go and get what do you call this, stock free images, you know, like, so stock illustrated stock free images from like Pixabay. I mean, if you build websites, you know you need images all the time. And I struggled with like looking for images for like African people. You go to stock images, Pixabay, and you try to find an image of an African, a black woman. Maybe there's 2 or 3 images of a black woman, and everybody's using the same image because it's the only image available that's stock free, because you don't have the time to go hire a photographer and get a professionally done image of a model wearing whatever you want. So this for me is my use case, generating images that I use for websites. I've actually done it already with actual client websites since they released DALLE-3. Images for presentations, that is actually a good one, because we know when you do PowerPoint presentations, sometimes you need to sort of imagine certain things, like maybe you want to show a unicorn that is reading a book, and the kind of images you couldn't get before to illustrate the point you're trying to make about, you know, building a unicorn that is educated or something like that. So AI images is just amazing. I'm actually going to build an AI image generating for stock image website that I'm going to share with you guys in the coming future, because this is the future of stock images. So all these stock image companies are going to go out of business because the quality of AI images has improved quite a bit. If you think of DALL-E when it started and DALL-E today, you know, the image quality is just amazing. So now you can specify over here the quality. You can say HD. You can also specify there's something else I want to, what else? The type. All right. So there's something here. I can't see it now. There's something here. I don't see it anymore, but you could specify the type of image. I think it's in the documentation here. Other parameters, yes. So here's the model. You can specify the model as, I'll also link this in the description below. You can either enter DALL-A2 or DALL-A3, but obviously we're going to go for DALL-A3. And if you leave it empty, it will default to DALL-A2. Okay, yeah, there it is, natural or vivid, the style. So you can also specify the style. So you could say the style generated images must be one of the vivid or natural. Vivid causes the model to lean towards generating hyper, real, and dramatic images. So that's vivid. Natural causes the model to produce more natural, less hyper. You know, it defaults to vivid. So vivid is the default. And if you want to have a more natural feel, for example, more photorealistic, you could use natural instead. So I'm going to leave this as vivid, but try playing with both of them and see which one works. And then obviously the quality is standard or HD. If you don't specify it, it will default to standard. But I've specified HD, all right? So I've already gotten that covered, and then you can have more than one end. But actually, it says in here that for DALLE-3, only n is equals to 1 is supported. So you can't generate more than one image with DALLE-3. But for DALLE-2, you could have n is equals to 2 and gotten 2 different images of the same prompt, so the user can choose. But I always use 1, even on my applications. I never use 2. Because it charges you for 2, remember. All right, and then it outputs a URL, right? And then you can either download the image from that URL to send it to the user, or you could just display the image back to the user using the URL. Okay, so for us right now, we want to be able to get that URL and then display that URL back to the user. All right, so if we now rework our function over here, we will say this is now actually a URL. All right, and then this URL is going to be this function, generate image with the prompt. Generate image with the prompt, and then we actually want to send back the URL. Okay, but now we don't want to do chat. In fact, we can change. We can do this. We can have a generic, you know, Karabo image. Yeah, I generated the following image. Okay, so you could do this the thing. Let me look for emojis. Emoji. I want to look for a picture emoji or a picture frame. Picture. I want to keep the emoji sort of theme going with my application. So we'll copy that. So I want to say, hey, I generated the following image, and then we need to actually show the image. So to do that, let's see. I want to see how to do st image. Let me just double check how to display an image properly. Oh, there you go. St image. So you'll get the image URL and then you'll do it like that. Okay, so Streamlit is not my strength, by the way, but it's very easy to learn. And so this URL, this image URL must be the same URL that's coming out of there. Okay. And then you can have a caption if you want. Maybe I'll just say AI generated image. All right. So if there's a prompt, what it will do is that it will, first of all, it will write the user prompt. It will generate the image using the prompt that was entered. It will display an assistant message that says, hey, I generated the following image, right? And then it will show the image. You can even have an assistant message ahead of time right here. And you can even say, hey, I am busy generating an image. Please be patient. Right, so that it knows that you're busy doing something. So over here we could have a clock or a clock emoji that tells the user that you're actually busy generating the image, so that the user doesn't get impatient, right? And then it can then display the image. But this will be now a different application, right? So let's stop this. Let's clear that. And let us, first of all, let's test our function, right? I like to test my function manually. So I'm going to create a prompt, and then, so let's call Python over here, and then let's import GPT, right? And then let's create a prompt. A beautiful African woman with curly hair in a studio setting, posing for a professional photographer. Okay. So that's the prompt, and then let's then call GPT dot. All right, GPT dot. Let's call that function. It should return a URL, which we can just double check the URL and see the image. So it takes a while, but I haven't had hanging issues with the DALLE-3 yet. There you go. There's our image. So we can copy this image URL. We can just like try it, play it out. I mean, try to display it on any website and then have a look at it. So there it is. Hence, in my mind, I think Stable Diffusion still gets better. But I'll tell you what I found. I think they've been trained separately, and Stable Diffusion does a better job of people's faces and getting realistic looking. I mean, this is not a realistic looking person. You can see this is an AI generated person. But with Stable Diffusion, you actually get a more realistic looking person that you can hardly tell. I mean, you can tell, but it's not obvious. However, I've tested on a couple of things. I've found that DALLE creates better images of things like designs. So I was looking for like a billboard design, and I was looking for like, a social media design, and DALLE does a better job of that compared to Stable Diffusion. So I think it depends on what you're trying to. So maybe you can use them both depending on what your application is for. So if you're generating an application for design, and we'll test it now that we're going to have this running on the front end. So this function runs well. I'm good with that. So I'm going to exit here. Exit. and then I'm going to clear this. And then what we're going to do now is that we're going to then remove this app.py, and then we're going to save our new code, so our new IMG code in here. So it's the same thing. It gets Streamlit, it uploads GPT, and then it does that, and then hopefully this should display our image that was generated, you know. So let's do that, and X, and then let's do Streamlit run app.py. So now we should be able to, this is now an image generating website. So this website that was there before is now an image generating website. If I enter a prompt, even though it says chatbot, it should generate me an image. So if I say, what else? Let's try and get this. Let's try and get a billboard design. Okay. So generate a billboard design for a company called Modal GPT, you know, which is a WhatsApp based AI chatbot, right? So there you go. Immediately it got that, and then it sends that initial message that I'm busy generating your image, please be patient. So it's running. You can see at the top there it's busy running, so which means it's still waiting for the image response. So as soon as the image response comes, I generated the image, and let's see it. There you go. So I generated the following image. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? I'm actually going to use this image. Wow. So DALLE has got strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, I'm demonstrating that to you. When I generate the image of a person, it looks very fake. And if you go to Stable Diffusion with the exact same prompt, you don't get this high quality. Some of the letters are mingled together. You know, like when it still doesn't, you know, here you can see letters are mingled. They don't make sense. But at least it got the title correct and the WhatsApp logo correct. But with Stable Diffusion, actually everything is mingled, even the title. You can see it's trying to create a title, but it doesn't, the letters are not straight. But this is amazing. Like, I totally love this, right? Like you can if you're doing like a graphic design, you can get it to at least give you ideas, and then obviously you can still rebuild this in your graphic software, but the original idea of what's amazing and what works, you can get the Stable Diffusion to help you with that, right? But now this is only an image generator, you know. And in the olden day, I mean, in the old what we would have done before was have a menu, which I've shown you in the last Streamlit app, how to create a menu to the left where if someone wants to do the image generation, they can click on the image generation thing and it generates an image. And if they want to do a thing, they can click. In fact, we can build that, right? We can build, because this is how we would have done it before. And then I'll show you an even better way of doing it, where we will now merge everything into one application and have the application intuitively know whether you're asking for an image or you're just chatting. Okay, so that's really good. That's like proper professional design kind of stuff. You know, how do you do that? So let's start the old way we used to do it, where you would have the menu options and pick whether you are generating an image or whether you're just having a chat. Okay, so I think I've got that old app still here where you could do that. So let me open it up. So I think it's this app, this one. Yes, no, it's not this one. App 2. No, it's not this one. Dish embed. Yeah, it's this one. So you have it like that, and then you can just update this at the bottom. Actually, this is all I need. All right. Yeah, this API key has now been discontinued, so it doesn't work anyway. I've deleted it. It's an old API. This is from the last time I did this application. But nonetheless, let's go to app 2. All right. And let's do it like this. let's paste at the bottom here. I'll show you what the code is, exactly what I'm doing. And then so this must be page 1, and then we can use the img here and make this page 2. All right, so whatever, we can call this page 2. All right, and call this page 2. All right, so this one, page 1, is your chat assistant. Right, and then this one is your Scholar Online image generator. Right, and image generator, let's try and use that for the image generator. Okay, your personal, I am here to generate AI images for you, right? And this one is, I'm here to assist. We're gonna leave it like that. So basically you have 2 pages in the Streamlit app, right? And these 2 pages, the second one, page number 2, is an image generator, right? And page number 1 is a chat assistant. Okay. Previously, when we built this, we were trying to build multiple bots with multiple personalities, but now we'll just do it like that. So basically, you'll be able to see 2 pages on your Streamlit app, and you should be able to move between the different pages. And if you are on page number 2, it runs this function, GPT generate image function with a prompt. And if you are in page number 1, it runs the function call with the bot. So the user would have to move between the different pages. If I want to generate an image, I go to the image generator. If I want to have a normal conversation, I go to. So what is happening here? The main function which we were running before in Streamlit, we've just renamed to page 1. Okay, so we've renamed it to page 1, and then we call it at the bottom there. And then the image function, we renamed it to page 2. Everything inside the function remained exactly the same. So whatever we had done before, we just copied and pasted that in there. And then we just have to find a way to navigate between the 2 different pages. So we create a new object called pages, and then it shows page 1 and page 2. So this is an object with page 1 and page 2. Then we rewrite the main. Okay, we renamed this page 2 and page 1. We rewrite the main, and then we add a sidebar using Streamlit sidebar, and then we call this sidebar navigation. We could call this Scholar Online navigation. You could call it anything you want. All right, we will just call it Scholar Online, right? And then after that, there's a select box where you can choose between the different, and then we show the choices. And then here it just uses the keys to create the select chatbot based on this page's object that you've defined over there. Okay, so you'll see what this looks like in the end. Let me just save all of this and then rerun this, right? Let's stop that. Let's remove what was currently there. App.py, let's recreate app.py, and we'll see over here, this is what let me just make some extra space there. I mean, not make, but like remove some of these extra spaces, and I'm just gonna copy this function and run it in there. All right, cool. Now we wanna do Streamlit. Run app.py. All right, and then now this application is going to be different. Let's restart it. Oh, I didn't download my oh, I should have downloaded my thing. Oh, damn it. And I know when I ask for the billboard again, I will get a different one. But anyway, what I wanted to show now, you can see we now have a sidebar. This sidebar is now the menu with a drop-down assistant, where you can navigate between chat assistant, which is the default, or you can navigate to image generator. If you navigate to the image generator, you see you are on the image generator. If you go to the chat assistant, you are on the chat assistant. So it's actually like two different pages. This is how you do URLs, or like creating two different pages for your app. So now if I want to do the chat assistant, I just want to ask it a question like, tell me more about, I don't know, tell me more about what's an interesting rocket science. Tell me more about rocket science. And there you go. Rocket science is a study and an application, So this is, it goes straight to the chat completion, right? But if I go to image generator and I ask for generate an image of a white dog sitting, a white chihuahua sitting on a window, right? It'll go into the image generator, it'll work, you'll see it's running over there. It's running to generate the image, which takes a bit of time. So we'll just sit here and wait for it and wait for the image to come through. It has generated the image, and then it just puts in the URL in here because it's such a huge image. But look at the quality here, is much better. So people are not as great as dogs and animals. So probably it was trained on more images of dogs. Or maybe it was just African people that it wasn't trained so well on, because it can generate dogs just as fine. Look at that. This is amazing. I mean, DALLE-3 is a huge improvement from DALLE-2, right? So now we've got this and we've got that. Now, what I really want, okay? What I really want, and people don't like this moving between applications. Now I must go back to the chat. Now I must go back to the image generator. This is not cool. I used to have this in my WhatsApp app and I got rid of it because what people want is just when they generate an image, they'll come. I used to have this on my menu and people would come to the chat assistant and ask for an image. And then the image would, like, let's say I come here and I say, generate an image of a dog, right? And the thing is, when I respond, I'd be like, oh, I'm a language model. I don't know how to generate an image of a dog. I can't do that, or whatever. Like here, it's confused. It's probably hanging now because it's taking so long to come back. But the point I'm trying to demonstrate here is people will go to your, even though the menu is there, people don't use their brains. They will go to the chat assistant and they'll ask for an image. And then they won't get an image and they'll say, your app is not working. So how do you make this app intuitive enough that if somebody asks for an image, it can pick out the image intent and actually generate the image? And then if somebody asks for just a normal conversation, it will answer. And then it will be one conversation. It won't be the menu. So you get rid of the menu, you go back to, so I'm not going to delete this because I love this app. I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call it app3. Right? I'm going to call it app3 and I'm going to start with what we had initially on img.py. I'm going to start with this, okay? And I'm going to go to app3 and I'm going to paste that. Okay, so this is probably hanged. Let's try it again. So this is when the hanging happens. Like I told you, it's so random, right? Generate an image of a dog. It should come back and say, yeah, I don't have the capacity to generate images, but I can suggest websites or apps so you can find, because the chat functionality can't actually generate images. It's two different models. As you can see, it's two different models here. This model is client.images and this one is client.chat completions. Now, you can automate all of this, or at least intuitively get your app to be intuitive using function calling. All right. And I'm going to go to the old function calling, not the new parallel function calling. We will cover that in another tutorial because the new parallel function calling is a whole new monster, right? Which I've figured it out, but I don't know if it's the most efficient way of doing it, but that's just my opinion. So I'm going to go back to the old function calling. All right. And we're going to write a new function over here, right? And this function, we're going to say def run function call. Run old function call openai. Okay, let's just do that. Yeah, it's fine like that. Or let's use the snake run old function call. Okay, and then there'll be a prompt. So what are we trying to achieve here? The first thing we're trying to do is we need to run a function call which has, which is going to determine whether or not the person wants to generate an image or not. And then it will be able to determine if the intent is an image generation intent. And if it's an image generation intent, it will generate an image. Otherwise, it will, it will do something else. So we need to create the images as usual. I mean, the messages as usual, right? With the prompt, right? But the system message, I'm going to edit it a little bit. I'm going to say you are a helpful chatbot. Actually, this system instruction, I'm going to do it like this so I can, I'm going to do it like this so that I can type more. I can make it like a proper. You are a helpful chatbot on WhatsApp, right? Include relevant emojis. We'll have that at the end. You have access to functions and can do function calling. Okay. Determine if a function should be called and call it, or or revert, okay, and call it, or revert to the old chat response. I don't think you have to say this in so much detail, but I think it helps to put it in the system message. So you do that, and you can also ask ChatGPT to help refine this for you. I actually use ChatGPT quite a bit to help write my system instruction. So I'll create a system instruction, and then I'll go to ChatGPT, and then I'll say, this is what I want the chatbot to do. Here's what I've already written so far. Can you help refine it? This is the intention, and ChatGPT will write it nicely for you. We can even do that now, right? So let's create a new conversation. I'm trying to write a system message for a chatbot that should have access to function calling. It should determine if a function should be called and execute, or just do the normal chat response. Okay, here is what I have so far. Please refine this. Okay, and then I'm gonna just paste what I've written, and then it will rewrite the prompt for me. Okay. System for it's quite long. System message for chatbot on WhatsApp. Hello, I'm your friendly chatbot designed to assist you on WhatsApp. My capabilities include. Okay, actually, I'm not gonna even do that. I'm just gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave my old whatever I've written. That's way too long. All right, but you can try this and you can refine it, and you can say, no, you are the chatbot. Okay, but nonetheless, once you've done that, then you're going to initialize initialize this, the client, and get the response. Okay, so let's do that. We're going to initialize the client and get the response with the messages, and then over here we need functions is equals to functions. All right, and we need to define the functions. All right, so these functions, we can define it here. It's normally a list of objects, right? And I think I've got it in here, typed down at the end there. Okay, there you go, list of objects. And this is something I've used in the past, which has worked for me, but you can rewrite it any way you want. So the name of the function is going to be called get image request, and this is the old function calling way. So if you actually go to the documentation now and you go into function calling, for example, they don't recommend this old way of doing function calling, you know. So if you go to the documentation now, all you're going to find is the parallel function calling, and the parallel function calling uses tools. And so inside of your API call, you're going to enter tools, okay, and not functions. So they actually don't have this, what I'm writing for you in the documentation anymore. But if you remember, where the function has a name and a description, if you see over here, you'll see the function. Actually, this is the function object, the name and the description, and the type is a function. So tools, actually, what I suspect is that tools are going to be they're going to be different types of tools that they're going to introduce, because you can see they have a tool type function. So I suspect maybe what they're going to add on to this is maybe there will be a tool type something else, a tool type, you know, maybe they're going to build more tools into this thing, maybe even tools you can define yourself, and then you'll pick the type of tool, whether you want a function type tool or something else. So the function object itself, if you look at the function object itself, from the description and the parameters, this is exactly what we used to have before when we called functions, right? So this is just functions without the tools. And based on the documentation, they've already deprecated these functions, although it still works. So you can still add functions as equals to functions over here, but it's deprecated, which means it's not recommended that you actually use it. They recommend you use tools and you work with your tools going forward, not functions. So I'm doing it the deprecated way, and I'll give you my reasons. My reasons are this specific use case, because the way tools work, and maybe I'll do a full tutorial on tools and parallel function calling, because it works completely different from what I'm used to. With the functions, when you define the functions, it generally picks the best function or doesn't pick a function at all. But it picks one function or doesn't pick a function at all. With the tools, it picks multiple tools that could be relevant to the user. And then you have to run a second API call with a response from the tools to get the final response for the user. You understand? But now, if one of my functions, for example, is generating an image, how do I feed back the image to the API for the API to now determine, you know, like, do I have to generate the image and feed it back as a URL? You know what I'm saying? Like, what if the function is to send an email, for example, you know, because functions can be actions, you know, because maybe I suspect that maybe the next type of a tool will be you know, an action or whatever. I don't know. I'm just trying to imagine why they built it like this. So for now, I'm keeping the original functions, and what I'm demonstrating to you is using the original functions because it still works. Okay, so you can say functions is equals to functions over there, and then the function call thingy is automatic. You can define it, or you can just leave it blank because it defaults to auto, right? Or you can force it to call a function by saying the function call true. Understand? But now the documentation is no longer there. I always have to refer back to it. They've removed it. I don't remember anymore how exactly you specify how to choose the function called auto, but I know the auto is the default, so we shouldn't have a problem. So then you have your functions like that, and this function is a list, right? It's a list of function objects, and the function object that we're going to call, the name of the function is going to be called get image request, right? And we're going to say the description is get or generate an image for the user given a prompt or intent to return an image. Provide the image dimensions. So over here now I'm saying the description of my function is to generate an image. So we are going to look at the prompt of the user and we're going to check if that prompt fits into a function to generate an image. Then if it fits into a function, this is what the function must return. First, it must return the prompt. So it must pick the prompt out from the text that the user, so this prompt is not the same prompt that went in there. This prompt would be refining whatever the user has prompted and get an image generation prompt out of it. Understand? The image prompt provided. Pick it up. So image might say, ChatGPT, I feel like today I'd like to see an image of a cat that might be pink or whatever, and the AI would look at what the user has prompted and refine the prompt for the AI, you understand, in a more clear way for the AI. But what we really want out of here as well is the intuition of whether the person wants a square image or a landscape or a portrait. So this is actually intelligent enough to say, because you're asking it, based on this prompt, what do you think would be the best sort of dimensions of an image? So if somebody asks for a billboard, you'd expect the prompt to think, well, billboards are normally landscape, and it will return a landscape. Somebody asks for a portrait of a model, or even if the person was very specific and then says, I want a square image, then you'll know you want a square image. So this is also intuitive to be able to determine the dimensions of the image, which with our old IMG, where is it? GPT, we had fixed the dimensions as 1024, 1024. But actually, if you look over here, right, these are all the available dimensions, which means you could generate a 1024, you could generate, so let me put them in here. You could gen 1024, 194, and then this one. So let me just put this in ChatGPT and ask it, because I always get confused as to what's what over here. Did I close up my ChatGPT again? Okay, given these dimensions, which ones are landscape and which ones are portrait? Okay, let's see. 1024 is square. This one is landscape. The other one is portrait. Perfect. So now, these functions will have a response, and we will call the model, and we will enter the messages, all right? And then we will enter the functions, okay? We'll enter the functions as equals to functions, okay? After we've done that, let's see. Let's just copy this over here, okay? No. Yeah, let's just cut it and put it in there. I don't want to rewrite this because it's not in the documentation anymore. I have to write it from my old code. So function call is equals to choices at 0. Okay, so choices will be response dot choices. Okay, so this response, it has a choices. So if you take the response and you say dot choices and then the first choice, right? Because obviously we know that you can have it generate multiple choices, but we know this. And then you look for function dot function call, and then we check if a function was called. If a function was called, we check the function name, and then we check the arguments, right? But in this specific case, I only have one function, right? But ideally, you actually want to check the function name, and then you actually want to say if function name is equals to, we need to check that the function name is equals to this, get image request, because you could have multiple functions technically, and I've seen it call a function that was not there. hallucinating. So if function name is equals to that, the arguments actually are there irrespective of the function name. So the function, oh, there you go. I've already written that. Okay. So let's do that. Yeah, that was correct. Okay. So if function name is equals to get image request, we have, if in our function, we have two different variables that can be given out. The first variable is the prompt, and this is a string of the image prompt provided by the user. And the next output that the function can give is the dimensions, and it will pick out from the prompt what dimension should be, and we've given it an enum, which means it has to choose between three different. It can only return square, landscape, or portrait. It can't return anything else, and both of these are required. So sometimes if it can't figure it out, it guesses, so it's okay as long as it's doing its best guess, and this is sufficient for image generation in a chatbot. Because sometimes you want to give the user the impression that you're at least being intuitive in your application, that you're not just sending square images, especially since the model has the ability to generate all the different dimensions. You know what I'm saying? So at least sometimes the user can specify. You can even train in your documentation for the users to specify in there that I want a square. Otherwise, the model will think itself and figure out what dimensions to use. So it will return a prompt and dimensions. So this is the prompt and this is the dimensions. And to get from the function the different arguments, so the arguments is JSON.load. So we need to import JSON here. Import JSON. So it will say JSON.loads the function call argument, and then if the function name is that, it will get the prompt and the dimensions. Okay, so now we can do something with the dimensions. So now this generate image, I'm gonna put it at the top before here, right? And instead of entering this prompt, manually in there, where are those dimensions of mine? So instead of entering this like that, right, I'm going to create a string and call it dimensions. All right, dimensions, and I'm going to put that in here, dimensions. All right. And these dimensions can be that or that, okay? Or even better, what we can do is we can, because this is, let's just figure out a way. We could write this with inside the function, which is probably better. No. Yeah. So let's leave the original generate image because I don't want to okay. And let's call this generate image with dimensions, so that it's a different function, so that the original function still works, and that the original pages, if they are built with the original function, if they don't break the original function, it's better to just create a new function. So over here, what we need to say, this is a square image, right? So in here, we will have dimensions like that. And then we'll say if dimensions, right, is equals to square. If dimensions is equals to square, or we can say the size is equals to this 1024 1024. Okay, and then this size will now be equals to the size there. You see, cool. And then we can say elif dimensions is equals to landscape. So there's also landscape, okay? If it's equals to landscape, let me be consistent with my double quotes. If it's equals to landscape, the size is equals to landscape, it's this, okay? All right, is equals to that 1792 times 1024, which is going to be in quotation marks, okay? elif dimensions if the dimensions is equals to portrait, right, we will say the size is equals to this. So then we will feed the size into the model, and actually else we'll just, the size will be square, but that shouldn't be the case because the enum would be one of these three, because that's what's defined in there. So these dimensions over there can be a square, landscape, or portrait. So we need to make sure that even in here, let's make sure that all the spelling is the same. Portrait, that's how I'm defining the portrait over there. All right, the landscape, that's how I'm defining the landscape over there, if it's landscape. All right, and then square, that's how I have it in there as well, if it's square, so this will work. All right, and then we then call the client, and we say openai, and we enter the model, the prompt is now going to be the prompt that we entered there, and then the size is going to be the size that comes out here based on these dimensions that come in from the model. And then we're going to want HD, and then we're going to return the URL. Okay, so let's delete that. So now this image, this is now going to return the image URL. Okay, so image URL is going to be equals to that. Okay, and then over here, that's the content. MSG, should we call this? Yeah, let's just call this content. All right, so now both of these are strings, right? So you can even call this, yeah, no, this is an image URL. Let's call this image URL. Okay, so now we have an image URL, and then we have a content, right? And these are two different types of data and must be treated separately by your application. So we need to be able to know whether or not an image was generated or a content. So we can create an object. So this is a good way of actually doing this. We can create an object. We can return this object, right? And in this object, we can have, we can say the type, right? The type, we can have a type, and I'm just thinking as I go along. We can say the type of the what that was returned was image, and then we can say the content was equals to this image URL. Okay. Otherwise, over here we can have it can return the same object, because when you return things in a function, you only want to return a standardized thing. And when you're calling the function on the other side, you need to be able to then pass your standardized object. So if you have now this function that can return two different things, it can return a URL, it can return just a text content. You need to be able to then tell the difference of what was returned. Was it an image? And it needs to be a standardized way of telling the difference. So for me, one of the best sort of tools and methods I use is to then put the stuff into an object where then I have a type. And I know that this is either a type image, or in this specific case, it's going to be a type text. And then over here, the text, it will be content. And then I can then search for the type that was returned. So now I'm returning now a consistent object. You understand? So I've moved from returning either a URL or a content, because how would I know on the other side whether I should display the image or whether I should display the content? Because you can see that the way we display an image is different. We say st.image and we put in the URL. And the way we display the content on the other side, it's different as well, because if it was a message, we displayed via chat message. You understand? So I need to know whether it's an image or a text so that I can display the right thing and also return a consistent object, right? If you don't understand this, just watch this a couple of times and it will get to you. And then on the other side, so now when I call this, right? When I call this old function call, when I call this just with the prompt, it will go and do the function call, and then it will either, return that or that, and so forth. Now, yeah, it will return that or that. And then where is it? This old function call with the prompt. Where is my app3.py? Okay, so this app3.py, so let's start here. Response is equals to GPT dot with the prompt. All right, with the prompt. All right, cool. So now this response is now an object. This response is now an object. It can be with a type. Okay, so I need to say response.type. Okay, I need to say if response.type. So this can be equals to image, right? And if it's equals to image, we do exactly what we did before. We should probably don't need this. And we don't need to call this function again. The image URL is now the response dot. The image URL is now the response.content. You see. So the image URL is the response content. And then the sentence says, I have generated the following image. And then it will show the image URL, which is this image URL. It will show the image URL. Okay. Elif response.type. So the response type can also be something else, right? So the response type can also be, it can be image or it can be text. All right, so it can be image or it can be text. And if it's text, we actually just need to write that. st.chat message assistant, write the response.content. Not just the response, because now it's the response is now an object. So the response.content. Do you see how we've done this? Still only like 5 lines of code. But now what we're doing is actually very, very powerful, right? This is like advanced programming now, okay? And stuff you're not going to learn anyway, right? What we're doing is we've made our chatbot really, really intelligent, right? Using functions. We are running a function, and in this function, we added a function that will determine if this prompt is for generating an image. Okay? Get or generate an image user. So this will activate, this prompt will activate if the user wants an image. And if this activates the user image request, this function gets activated, then we'll have a function call, and the function name will be that function name is the only function in there, and we'll be able to pull out the prompt and the dimensions from the image. Then we'll get the image URL by running this function here with the prompt and the dimensions, right? And the prompt will be the prompt we got from there, and the dimensions can either be square, landscape, or portrait. And if it's square, it will generate those dimensions. If it's landscape, we generate that, and so forth. And that is the size that will go in there, and we'll get it HD, and we'll get the URL, and it will return us an image. So this will return an actual image URL, and if that is what happened, we will return an object that says type image and URL. Otherwise, if this function was not activated, we'll just get the content the way we normally get the content, the old way, which will just get, it will return type text. So in here, inside of the app, we will check for the response type, if it's type image or if it's type text. If it's type image, we'll know that what we have under the content is a URL, and then we'll display the image. If it's type text, we will know that what we have under the content is a normal text response, and we'll display that instead. And then else, I think if you have an elif function, it's always good to have an else. Let's assume something went wrong, and I'm just gonna put that assistant and say something went wrong. Please try again. Ideally, this shouldn't actually activate because this function will either return this or that. There's nothing else it will return, you know. So this actually will never activate, really, to be honest. All right, are we ready to test our function? Oh, I'm a bit nervous. I'm writing this for the first time, so I actually don't know what's going to happen. And I'm doing this on camera, so if it doesn't work, bear with me. But I'm writing it just from my logic on camera, and let's see how this will work. Okay. Let's do Python shell first, because let's just do Python. Python shell is just Python. This is not Django. So the first thing I definitely want to do is test my function, this GPT function, because this is the only thing that can go wrong with this. All right. So let me start by testing this function. So from GPT, import all the functions from there. So there's no error in the file. Good. Let me just start with a prompt. Let's try and get that billboard. Okay. Billboard. Okay, that's the prompt. And then the dimensions for me, I will use landscape. Okay, let's say my dimensions are a landscape. Okay, let's use landscape, and then let's run this. So this should generate me a link, a URL link of a landscape image. Okay, GPT .that. Heaven. Oh, I didn't push the function. Sorry, exit. Oh. Okay, so I need to rewrite my GPT file because it's different now. All right, nano. Let me actually just remove the old one. Remove GPT.py. All right, so let's rewrite this. Cool, and then let's do Python again. From GPT import. I don't want to retype these things. Just copy and paste. And dimensions landscape, copy and paste. Okay, so you've imported everything from GPT, so actually this function should just be imported directly. So what I had before should work. This, it should just output the link. Dush. There you go. Let's have a look at our image. Remove the comma at the end. I mean the exclamation at the end. There you go. Got me a nice portrait image of, and it takes a while to load because this is really huge image, and it's high definition image of that's really big, you know. So DALLE really generates really big. The DALLE-3 gets really bigger images. Obviously, you can downsize them before you send them to your clients. But look at that. This is amazing. Like, wow. Some of the text still doesn't, but you can get an idea of what it's trying to write over here. You can get an idea of, okay, it's trying to say that there. You can see black and green design colors are the ones which are going to work for this. You can see the bot in the middle, and this is really cool. I'm actually going to use this to design my billboard, and I've gotten a couple of good options that I'm going to work with. But so this function works, right? But I want to see now the function calling, right? If the function calling will actually work as well. So what I want to do is I want to define, actually I want to use the exact same prompt. I want to use the exact same prompt and do this. Run the old function call with the prompt and see if it will figure out the landscape with the wada and generate the image as well. So I'm going to use the old function call with the prompt. So if it works well, it should generate an object for me, and it should generate an object that says type image, and then the content should be a URL. Okay, so it should generate a nice object with a type image. If it doesn't hang, I think at this stage it's hanging. No, it's not hanging. So it generated a prompt with type image. You can see there, right? We will check this image out later. But while we do that, let's write another prompt and tell me a bedtime story. All right, so if we run this again, it shouldn't generate a type image. It should generate a type text. There you go. So the same function will either return a text or it will return an image. So let's see what this image looks like. So the function works as I expected it, or as I intended, or as I want it to work, right? So this is on my other billboard. I'm going to keep this billboard and download them. Let me actually download this one before it gets lost. Save image as. This is my billboard. Billboard 1. Let's see this one. Okay, while this one waits. So now my function works as I expected, as I have designed it. This is a bedtime story, once upon a time, faraway land, Okay, so I'm good with that. So now we can run our functions are fine. We didn't have to make any edits, so we don't have to rerun anything again. We can just remove the app.py that was in there and create another app.py file where we're now we've rewritten our Streamlit application. It's still just a short app, but now instead of having those menus, right, you should be able to, it should intuitively know whether or not you want an image or not. Wait. No. Let's run this again. Why am I copying only up to there? I need to copy the entire file. The entire file, x, y, true. And then let's clear this and let's do Streamlit run app.py. Okay, now when we run our app.py, our Streamlit application, where is it? It's this one there. This menu will disappear. We don't have the menu anymore. We've gotten rid of it so that the app intuitively knows what exactly you want. Okay, there you go. So it's gone back to the chatbot, right? And you can say, what does what is the best way to lose weight? I'm just thinking of a random question. Okay, let's hope it doesn't hang. There you go. The best way to lose weight is through a combination of healthy, balanced diet and regular exercise. Okay, cool. Okay, generate a landscape image of a billboard. okay, for a company called Modal GPT, a WhatsApp-based generative AI application. Cool. Now I'm asking for an image, right? And it shouldn't just say, oh no, I can't generate images anymore. I'm not capable of doing that. I'm a language bot. The function should call the image generation capability, and I should get an image out. I have generated you an image, and there it is. Understand? So now I want to give you a bit of homework while this image is displaying, because it's actually quite a large image. And I'm going to give you some tips. Now, imagine this function. We've only done one function in here. This is one function, is a list of objects. Practically, I've built a function object with up to 20 functions in here. I've done it with up to 20 different functions, and it picks the right function every time, intelligently so. So imagine you could add multiple functions in here, functions for Googling, functions so that you could just intuitively know. You know, the multiple personality bot we built, you could add it as a function, and then it could just pick the right object to call based on the question that the user is asking, right? So this is the possibility for this is endless, and I'm going to let you sort of figure it out and play along with it. But this is actually how we are building production applications now. We are now integrating the function calling into the model, and instead of having long menus, and I'm sure this is how they're doing it even on ChatGPT itself, where you used to be able to have to choose what you want to do, but now you just, multimodal, we should be able to even upload an image, and then it knows when you've uploaded an image, now it should be analyzing the image. And whether you're asking for analyzing the image or describing the image, it should then pick the right function and say, if you're just you want to redo the image that you've uploaded, then it should pick DALLE-3, for example, to redo the image. And if you're just asking about a description of the image, it should go and pick GPT-4 Vision and analyze the image and then respond that way. I mean, the possibilities are endless. And so what I've demonstrated here to you today is amazing. And thank you guys for watching, and let me know what you think about this, and in the comments below, of course, as usual. And we'll see you next time when we continue with this tutorial.